Healing Hands Health Society presents Dental Webinar Series. We have planned a series dental webinars to keep you abreast of current practice. This series on prosthodontics will be via Zoom, Facebook Live. Presenters are drawn from dental schools in the USA, private practitioners from around the world. To register for future webinars, visit www.hands.org/dental-training.
We are on to, just called it, we have Dr. Maria Alfaro. She's next. We've had an interesting day. We're not going to talk about that, but she's here. She's live. I'm going to introduce her. Thank you so much, Maria. Maria is a recent graduate from the program at University of Michigan. She earned a Doctor of Dental Surgery degree from the University of Costa Rica in 2010. Upon graduation, she worked as a general practitioner for 3 years. Affinity to the field of prosthodontics drove her to enroll in the advanced prosthodontics observership program at the University of Illinois at Chicago. During her time at UIC, she worked as a research scholar with the guidance of Dr. Cortino Sukojo. There's a man here, he's on here, is an inspiration, and he's one of the reasons why we are doing this today. He said it is possible. She did study triple corrosion behavior of dental implants in a simulated oral environment. Her work has been presented in many conferences and awarded first place in the scientific table. She was offered a full-time position as assistant director of the digital health sciences. In short, what I'm saying is that, when we have any technical problems with digital, we call Maria to come and check out. She's a very good resource. I think, I don't know, we'll have to get that back to Michigan, Dr. Sadi. We have to do something about that. Anyway, Maria, welcome.
She's our digital queen.
Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. Really, what a beautiful presentation that we just heard from Dr. Prasad. And I want to thank personally Uvo for this amazing thing that he's doing. And I know that he's working super hard, and there is a lot of effort he has put into. So you really deserve a standing ovation for everything you have done. This is a tremendous idea. So this afternoon, I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about the role of digital workflows or technology in the area of prosthodontics. As you have heard or know, lately or in the past few years, dentistry has been transitioning into a more virtual environment. And with that being said, there are certain advantages and also some limitations that we're currently facing. So I hope that today I can show you some information that might be useful to understand where we're at this point and where are we probably currently facing with digital technologies. So a Greek philosopher once said that the only thing that is constant is change. And I think now more than ever, we all know what that means and how change can be a little bit complicated and difficult to embrace. And the society that we used to live or demands that happened 30 years ago are not the same that we are facing today. And those changes have been mostly due to technology. So right now we're dealing with great technological advances that we didn't even thought were possible. And that's in the same line with the dental world. Back in the 1500s, the Mona Lisa was the smile icon around the globe. And in the 1700s, George Washington's denture was the state of the art. So right now in dentistry, we are facing a lot of changes. And in a report that was launched by MedSuite in 2018, it was stated that the digital dental market had a market value of over $600 million. And they were expecting a rise of $1 billion for the year 2024. So, and that's not surprising, when we looked at the gigantic and sometimes overwhelming digital dental portfolio that we have, that we see out there. And the issue here is that sometimes, and most of the times actually, the industrial or the market evidence goes at a way faster rate than the scientific evidence behind. So we gotta be careful with what we see advertised out there. So I think that from all the fields of dentistry, prosthodontics and restorative dentistry has been one of the most affected fields or impacted by digital technologies. And I think now more than ever, we have to know exactly our core values, and we have to know exactly very well our analog techniques in order to apply in a more efficient way the digital workflows available. So in the year 2017, the American College of Prosthodontics published a position paper in which they evaluated the impact of digital technologies in the field. And they categorized different areas. And so this, I kind of put it together in three main categories that they looked at. So the first one being efficiency and quality. And one of the problems when we looked at digital technologies literature is the variability in the parameters, in the results, and it's very hard to draw conclusions from from different studies. So what the University of Zurich group over there put together a very nice randomized controlled clinical trials in which they analyzed single tooth-supported restorations with conventional and digital workflows, and short span fixed partial dentures with conventional and digital workflows. So with this series of studies, it was easier to compare results with one and the other one. So in their publications, they looked at three different areas: impression techniques, laboratory procedures, and clinical outcomes. So we're gonna go one by one. In terms of the impression techniques, for the single units, they actually compared digital workflows using three different scanners. In that study was a Lava from 3M, iTero, and the Omnicam from Zurich. And what they did is that they did partial scans or partial impressions and full arch scans with full arch impressions. The impressions were taken with a polyether material. And what they found out is that when in the full arch impressions, there were discrepancies and inaccuracies, especially in the intermolar area, due to problems in the with the files when the files were stitching or were coming together. But there were minimum, or even like sometimes the digital workflow displayed a better accuracy with the quadrants or partial arch impressions. In terms of the laboratory procedures, regardless of the method utilized or the CAD/CAM scanners, the digital workflow was much more efficient than the analog workflow in terms of the laboratory steps. So, and that was irrespective from the CAD/CAM system. In this particular studies, they were comparing Emax, which is lithium disilicate pressed crowns, versus Emax CAD mill crowns. And as far as fixed partial dentures, they were comparing the zirconia frameworks, milled frameworks, versus the noble alloy casted frameworks. And then they looked at the clinical outcomes, and they were pointed out two main areas. One was the marginal fit, right at the shoulder of the restorations, and the other one, the internal fit in the inside occlusal portion of it. In terms of the marginal fit, there were almost no differences for the single crowns, Emax Press versus Emax CAD. But for the fixed partial dentures, it was there were better results with the digital workflows of the zirconia frameworks versus the novel alloy frameworks. And interestingly, in terms of the internal fit, they got much better results from the conventional workflow compared with the digital workflow from both cases. And one of the things the authors highlighted was that the internal fit is very much milling system dependent. What does that mean? It means that there in the market, there are like a lot of milling systems available. Some of them are chair side, some of them have different axes, and that matters. If you send a crown or mill a crown with a chair side milling machine, the result will be different than an industrial milling machine that probably can provide more detail. So that was one of the things that they discussed. However, what it was also mentioned is that the regardless of what they were evaluating, they saw a much more standardization result with the digital workflow, meaning that the human error during the laboratory procedures was reduced dramatically. So that's something to take in mind. What about the implant-supported restoration? So in studies that they looked at single units for implant-supported restorations, it has been found that a digital workflow will improve the efficiency in terms of when fabricated implant-supported restorations. I added there a hybrid workflow. By that I mean a workflow in which you part of the procedures are analog driven, and the other ones are digitally driven. So let's say an intraoral analog impression with silicones, and the computer aid design and computer manufacture process for the fabrication of the restorations. When quality has been looked at in implant supported restorations, there has been a minimum to no difference in terms of the quality of the restoration itself for all of the workflows. And by that, like I said before, it is really hard to standardize with these studies because sometimes you're comparing apples to oranges, and that's a little hard. But what's true is that it doesn't mean that a conventional or analog workflow will provide you bad results. Not at all. I mean, what it means is that sometimes it's really hard to find a very good laboratory that can provide you with a high quality function and aesthetic restoration. And the digital workflow kind of allows that standardization, and the quality kind of reaches a plateau sometimes, but at least the human error is minimized. What about the full arch impressions or full arch cases? And here I'm talking about dentate patients or even edentulous patients. A lot of attention has been put into the impression capturing with digital scanners for full arch or for edentulous patients. And when we talked about accuracy in an intraoral impression, we should be familiarized with two terms: trueness and precision. Trueness meaning how close are we, that scan is from the real object, in this case the dental arch or the mucosal ridge. And by precision is how much variability is between one scan and the other one from the same target. Overall, it has been still, we could say that the standard of care for comprehensive rehabilitations or full arch cases is the conventional impression with a hybrid workflow. With that term, I mean an analog impression, like I explained before, a computer aid design protocol for the crown or fixed partial denture design, and computer aid manufacturing with either subtractor or additive manufacturing techniques with, let's say, milling machines or 3D printers. So when we looked at some of the most recent studies for intraoral impressions of edentulous arches, we could see that this publication that analyzed 6 different intraoral scanners for edentulous arch. Keep in mind, this is an in vitro study, so we should assume that conditions are optimal for the results that they obtain, which is not the same in the clinical scenario, in which scanning is completely different. There are limitations in terms of visibility, limitations with the saliva, and so forth and so on. But what they found in this study is that from the 6 scanners that they analyzed in terms of precision, so if you look in the left-hand side of the screen, that's a color map with the scan number 2, 3, and 4, and they found differences. And they mentioned that 4 of the systems that they analyzed, the Omnicam by Xerec, the Trios 3 by 3 shape, ADVA, which is a Japanese scanner, and the True Definition by 3M, all of them had clinically acceptable values in terms of precision. However, I put a star over there in the ADVA and the True Definition because they were concerns in terms of the resolution of the scanners. So the authors were saying that regardless of the high precision, you could obtain different results in the end fabrication of the restorations if there are limitations in terms of resolution. So we gotta be careful. And then the Planmeca Emerald and the Stroman Cares, which was before owned by Dental Wings, they had clinically intolerable measurements for this particular specimens that they were analyzing. And what about implant-supported restorations? So this is a very cool publication that came out very fresh from the oven in the Journal of Prosthodontics, and it was conducted by the group leading from University of Rochester in New York. And what they did is that they wanted to compare a digital impression for implant fixed complete dentures versus the conventional and traditional impression, which is the standard of care for this type of cases that involve an open tray with fixed copings. So what they did is that they scanned the patients using those white cylinders that you see there are scan bodies, so that will give the implant position and orientation. So they use those scan bodies, and they incorporated some fiducial markers, which are those little yellow circles that you see in the roof of the mouth. So they scanned those arches. 16 patients of it were participating in this study. So they scanned those arches, and then they took conventional open tray impressions for the same patients. And once they poured the cast, they engage all those scan bodies into that solid model, and they digitize that cast using a laboratory scanner. So they ended up having 2 files, one that came from the intraoral scanner and the other one that came from a laboratory scanner or desktop scanner that you can call as well. And what they did is that they merged both scans using a reverse engineering software called Geomagic. And what they found, they analyzed trueness from these impressions. And what they found is that the mean discrepancy that they got was approximately 16/10 of a millimeter, which is a very small value compared to the values that are considered clinically acceptable. So what that means, the authors mentioned that unfortunately the sample size was not that great, but that kind of tells us where are we heading, and we're still considering analog impressions as a standard of care for these cases, but we are shifting pretty rapidly into the digital workflow over there. So now when we look at communication, the dental technologies have broken all barriers in the area of space and time and communication between dental practitioners and laboratory technicians. And so now it's very common to share cases or to work with laboratories all around the world. And that's possible due to these technologies. And it actually has impacted a lot of the lab industry because it has shifted the model completely. Now, small labs can outsource work to big milling centers in order to provide clients with the state-of-the-art technology, and that allows them to keep their clientele and work together with very good partnerships. So when we look at communication between the dentist and the laboratory, the dental laboratory, with digital technology, especially with intraoral scanners, you get an immediate feedback from the finish line, immediate feedback from interocclusal clearance, and that will be very valuable when we are sharing information with our technicians. So I want to share this particular patient. He was in need of comprehensive rehabilitation that involved dental implants, fix and removable restorations. But what we did overall for this particular scenario is that we combine and use a hybrid workflow in which the impression was taken analog. We use conventional laboratory procedures for that, but then we digitize that information. We send it to the laboratory technicians, and we were able to have a back and forth communication that was much more helpful, and we could fine-tune details in order to get the final restorations. So we were able to seamlessly move from the initial presentation to the patient to the prosthetically driven implant placement using guided surgery, a full mouth preparation, the provisionalization, and the delivery of the final restoration. So we were able to provide the patient with and fulfill his desires in a more efficient way. And what about communication between clinicians? That's also enhanced with digital technology. So right now we're transitioning, like I said, into a more what's called a virtual model for a patient. So we have been able to visualize the patient and communicate with other specialties and work in a more efficient way, multidisciplinary, which is very valuable. And in the same line, communication with between the dentist and the patients. These digital platforms are not only helpful to show the patients what we are doing in real time, but also we know that 2/3 of the population, they learn more through visual communication. So we can educate our patients using this equipment in a more not only cool and more fun way, but also in a more reliable way for them. It's different to just provide the patient with just a piece of paper with a lot of details. Here they are looking at the screen and they are discussing with the dentist or the provider about the problems, the complications, diagnosis, and potential treatment plans. On a separate note, the fact that we could use these systems to store data, it's very good for medical legal also reasons, because it's like a database from all these patients. So that's also another benefit of this technology. I want to share also this particular patient treatment that I was able to work multidisciplinary using a fully digital workflow. So if you look at this photograph that's in the screen, by simply looking at it, you know that there are some problems involved. This patient was referred to me from the orthodontics department because the patient wanted to improve aesthetics. So we could look at there are diastemas in the aesthetic zone. There are like discrepancies in the gingival margin. So by just looking at that, you know that this is a multidisciplinary case that you have to coordinate with different providers. So the very first thing that I did was doing a diagnostic intraoral scan for the patient, and I was able to do what's called like kind of a digital crown lengthening, where I optimized the gingival margins where I thought were gonna be correct, and I incorporated the intraoral pictures and some extraoral pictures from the patient using the digital design module from 3Shape. I was able to merge all those files and start designing what's called a virtual wax-up. So at this time, I haven't even touched the patient. And what I'm doing is doing a virtual wax-up so that I could coordinate with my peers and providers what are the things that we should all work together. So if you looked at the picture in the right-hand side corner, there are, like, I was communicating with the orthodontist that probably number 7 had to be reclined a little bit. Also, probably the canines had to be shifted because I needed canine guidance to protect those respirations, and that needs to be achieved. And when I had that information, what I did was to export that file and design what's called the surgical guide for crown lengthening. So we were able in the school to print the guide using a 3D printer. And I provided the guide to the surgeon. In this case was a periodontist. So she was able to use the guide, and for her, it was way more helpful for both of us to communicate my needs, and also for her to implement those at the time of the surgery. So once she did the surgery, we left the patient with braces for a little bit to ensure healing. And then when she was debonded, I did the preparation of the 6 interiors. And that same day, I delivered the temporaries that I have previously milled out of PMMA. And the patient was happy, and it was a good outcome and then again, in a very efficient way because of the communication that we had between practitioners. So, and the third aspect, in terms of patient experience, this is funny because we know that most of the people, they don't like going to the dentist, and that's sometimes a burden, like financially and emotionally. And we know that fear is one of the reasons of it. And that small clip showed us what most of the patients think about the dentist, and they sometimes they fear pretty badly those alginate and impressions in general. So we know that with digital technology, we could provide more attractive solutions also to bring patients in. And like I said before, because it's a tool that can educate patients, it can be very beneficial for the practitioner, when they put it into place. However, regardless of all these benefits and advantages that I've went through, there are some challenges and limitations that we are currently facing with this technology. And I want to start first with the cost. This equipment is not only an investment and it's expensive, but also it changes very rapidly. So it becomes obsolete very rapidly. So that's something that we got to keep in mind when we invest in this technology, that probably a new scanner is coming out next year, a new milling machine is coming out, and we're going to stay behind. And that's an investment, and that's money that you have to put in the table. And on top of that, we have every single technological device, I think, and every single thing in life has a learning curve. But sometimes with technology, that learning curve can be frustrating and time consuming. And sometimes we need to know that before we get into this technology. I always said that I think digital dentistry has given me more patience, because I have to know how to work with the equipment and don't get frustrated easily when something goes wrong. And with that being said, it brings into the field a new set of skills and also a different language. We have to know and learn new terminology, a name of files, transfer of files, software information that we were not trained that we were not trained when we were in dental school or when we were practicing. So that's something that it's also an area that we have to expand in order to be proficient with digital equipment. And by that, I want to also add that technological support is a key factor for in order to run digital workflows and digital technology in an office or in a school, on whichever environment you want to run it, because we are not the experts in this field in terms of software engineering, in terms of troubleshooting, and that is something that is a factor that could be very detrimental when you try to incorporate workflows, and also when you try to buy equipment, because there are some types of brands that they don't have such a reliable technological support, and we have to know that before we get into those, before we buy their equipment. With that also being said, that there is still limited scientific evidence. We are lacking long-term clinical studies for digital workflows and digital impressions and digital technology in general, because it's been relatively new. So we gotta know which is what are the calculated risks that we can put into, because we have that, like I said before, the market goes at a faster rate than the scientific evidence backing up the equipment, and a lack of market regulation. Here in the United States, all the dental and medical devices, they have to go through FDA approvals. But once a medical or dental device it's approved by the FDA, then the series of that same device from different brands will get approved very, very rapidly. And sometimes they don't have the same quality as the first ones that were approved. So there are differences between the systems, and we gotta be aware of it. So the $1 million question is, how and when can we incorporate this digital technology in our area? Well, unfortunately, there is no like straight answer to that. But what I want to highlight at this point is that we gotta remember that digital technology, these are just tools that can help us do our job. And so it is I think now more than ever where we gotta be very, very proficient and dominate all the analog and conventional workflows before we jumped into digital technology, because that way that's the rationale. That's what's going to help us look at the which cases are suitable for a digital workflow and which cases are not. And that's a rationale that has to come from the dentist, not from the equipment, not from the company that's selling the technology. And I think that with that being said, it's also important to mention that the level of evidence that we get matter. And now, especially with digital equipment, there is so much information that you have to filter down, and that you don't know what's reliable and what's not. And I know that YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, there are very good resources in order to get information, but we gotta know what we're getting, and we gotta know what we're reading, and how accurate is that before we then again we jumped into making decisions that might be complicated later on. So with that, I want to wrap up this presentation and point out a few takeaway points here. The first one being that we gotta still know that there is limited evidence in terms of long-term studies for digital workflows. So we gotta be careful, and we gotta know the limitations and that those might have. When it comes to accuracy, there is a clear difference between digital systems. So we need, it's our job to do due diligence and investigate and find out which are the scanners that are more suitable, or which are the milling machines that could be even more suitable for certain type of procedures. In terms of the fully digital workflows, evidence tells us that you can rely on them for single units, implant or tooth supported, and short span FPDs, but there are still inaccuracies for full arch impressions, and we gotta be careful when we implement those. So still a hybrid workflow with an analog impression technique and digital design and manufacture of restorations is it's still recommended. Digital technologies enhance patient experience, communication between peers, between the patient and the practitioner, and between the practitioner and the dental laboratory. And it also helps us collect data from the patient that could be very helpful in the long term. And the last key factor is technological support is crucial. We know this, like I said, this this market goes at a very fast rate, and also there are a lot of updates, maintenance, license requirements, and so you need to have technological support in order to fulfill the requirements that these machines are asking you, and in order to put them in use in a more efficient and reliable way, like I said. And with that, I want to conclude the presentation, and I hope you all enjoyed it.
Thank you very much, Dr.
Healing Hands Health Society presents Dental Webinar Series. We have planned a series dental webinars to keep you abreast of current practice. This series on prosthodontics will be via Zoom, Facebook Live. Presenters are drawn from dental schools in the USA, private practitioners from around the world. To register for future webinars, visit www.hhands.org/dental-training. For future inquiries, contact Facilitator